Quilters don't need a reason to quilt. It's what we do. It's why we buy fabric. It's why we buy patterns. It's why we daydream about quilts and think about everything that we can make, and we get so excited. And then we hear about the holidays coming, and we are giddy with excitement at the thought of everything we can make for everybody that we love. And even people that are strangers will make quilts for everybody. But then September passes, and we don't have quilts made. What are we going to do? And then October's just about gone, and we have to cross names off the list. What are we going to do? I have an answer for you. I'm Lea Louise from Inspired Quilting by Lea Louise, and we are going to quilt, and we are going to use scraps. We are going to use everything that we already have. No need to buy fabric. There are free patterns, and I'm going to share some with you, and you have your favorite patterns. Let's use what we have and make some wonderful holiday gifts this year. Wait till you see this one. It's pretty fantastic. Come on, let me show you. I love how this turned out. This fabric is so pretty and so interesting. My goodness, it just draws all kinds of attention. If you didn't see this video a couple days ago, make sure you check it out, because I think if you have lots of scraps, I think you'll really appreciate what you can do with them to create your own free fabric. And then I used scraps for the piano key border. I think it looks wonderful. Oh my goodness, it turned out so sweet. And here's what I want to show you too, is the quilting. Can we see that? I'm not sure. I used a diagonal diamond quilting, and it's with a walking foot, straight quilting, nothing tricky about it. We're just sewing at an angle, and it turned out great. What I want to show you, because notice you don't see any thread color, because we had different colors on the front and the back, which I'll show you the whole table runner in just a minute. I couldn't decide what color thread to use for the quilting, so I went with my monofilament. Have you ever used this? It's like a nylon thread, and not unlike fishing line, but super, super thin, and it's great to quilt with. And I used the clear. There's also like a smoky gray, and I wanted to show you an example right here. This is just one of my scrap pieces that I quilt on. But if you look right here, can I get that? This one is the clear and this one is the gray. So the gray has a little bit of a shadow to it. It has a bit of dark color, but the clear, you don't even know that it's there. And it worked beautifully. And I used it as the top and bobbin thread, and I really like how it turned out. So the trick behind this is just setting your angle. Once everything was pieced and basted and I had all my layers together, I went ahead and drew a starting point, a diagonal line from one side to the other. And I made sure to draw it at a 30-degree angle, because that's what this point of the diamond is. It's 30 degrees because it's quite a narrow angle, but it looks fantastic in a quilt, and it's easy. All you have to do is find your 30-degree line on your ruler, and you'll probably have it in two different places. So you have a 45, a 60, but generally you'll always have a 30 as well. So what I did is, actually I think it went this way, is I lined my 30 right here along the border, and then I had the other 30 on this border. And how wonderful that they lined up for my quilt. Oh, I love it. So that just worked out so well. So all I had to do was draw a line on one side or the other and then quilt it. From there, I use my walking foot guide, and I went every 2 inches. Once that was done, I came back and I flipped it the other direction, and I drew the lines in the opposite. And so now when they crisscross, we have diamonds. Oh my goodness, this is so fantastic. I think it is just wonderful. I've never done that before. I knew you could, I just hadn't done it. So I'm really excited to share this with you. I'll show you later in the video about that quilting and just kind of some basic overviews. But what I did specifically with this is I wanted to show the full-blown project, but then an easier one. So you can see this is all pieced. These are all pieced. These are all pieced. I can't tell you how long this took. This was a lot of sewing. And I lost count of how many bobbins, but I love doing it. And I have cleared out so much fabric from many Christmases back. Now, here's a plain and simple, and it sort of has a homespun look with this plaid around the edges and an ecru background, but we still have the trees. Oh my goodness, these trees are what make this. But this is so much easier, and you don't have to make this fabric for your trees. You can actually buy some fun fabric and get something like this and cut out a tree. You can make it very, very simple, and it still looks wonderful. And I just love the idea. And you can add small trees. You can there's so much. There's just, endless possibilities. And I encourage you to give it a try and see what you can come up with. I give my dimensions throughout the video. This is 12 inches. This measures approximately 4.5 inches, I think. And this is 28. So it's not huge. It's manageable. And you can do this. So let me show you how I made this. This is when it all starts coming together. So I have my Christmas tree fabric pieced, and I started doing some cutting, but I want to show you first just how these two pieces joined. I had the two rectangles, and then I created this strip that I put together, and then I was able to add each side along that strip to make one continuous piece. And I'll be honest with you, I never imagined the trees would take this much fabric. Now, I did cut more than I need, but that's okay. I love the fact that I'll be using a lot of this. I thought, I really went overboard on this, which I probably did, but I'm having fun. But let me show you, I'm going to take these trees out. They've already been cut, but I want to show you the process of how we do this. When this is ready to go, we want to turn it over on the back side. And this is where it's important that everything be pressed really nice, because we're going to put the double-sided adhesive on here. And this is what's going to allow us to work with the fabric until we're ready to put it on the background and attach. This is going to hold everything, and after the piece is attached and it's sewn down, this also keeps the edges from raveling, because this is raw edge applique, and those edges aren't going to be sewn super securely. There will be a few little threads here and there, but for the most part, this does hold it all together, which is great. Now, this is a product called Steam A Seam 2. There's a Steam A Seam that has adhesive on one side only, and then the 2 basically gives you 2 layers of removable paper that you can use as you're applying your applique. So what you get is this grid piece here, and this is what remains with the fabric. You have an extra piece on the back that's quite loose, and it easily comes apart. This is what you would use to create your pattern. And the reason it's done this way is so if you need to cut a pattern out and need it to be reversed, that you can draw the pattern here, and then when you cut it, this is going to lay the right direction. So that's, very beneficial, and I think that's part of the reason why they went to the different. Now, this has been years since they've had Steam A Seam 2. I've been using it for a long time. And obviously, you don't have to buy the jumbo box. I do, because I use a lot of it for a lot of different applications, and it's just a great product. Then what you do is, this is just finger pressed. You can see that I can come in and take this off. The adhesive is there, but it's not permanent. So I can, I rub it. When I lay it down, I rub it really good just to make sure it's in contact. And then when I'm ready, I can either go ahead and steam press this to secure it permanently, or adjust it and pull this off and move it a little bit one way or the other, which is really, really helpful, because sometimes when you have a large piece, it can be a challenge to get it just where you want it. I want to show you how I determined cutting my trees. So if you take a look at these, and you can see the print, the fabric, the seams are all diagonal. The first one, I just went straight up and down, and I don't like that. I really like when these are turned a little bit skewed. So I took my tree, and I'm laying it, but I can't see through it. So just to give you an idea of how I came up with this, this was a piece that was 5 inches by 9 inches. And all I did on this piece of cardboard is I marked the center on the top of the 5-inch side, and I drew a line down to this corner and a line down to this corner, and then that's my tree. So it was very easy. There was no math involved, nothing technical whatsoever. So now what I could do is say, okay, I think maybe I like this spot right here. And so what I would come in then with these side pieces that I cut off. Now, I didn't even think about this when I cut these off. I'm glad I saved them, because then I can pull this up and say, oh, look, there's my tree. I like that. Or maybe I want to do it over here. And so I'll come in and I will lay this on the side, but then I want to block it off on the bottom and go, ooh, I like that. I like that one better. So then I would just come in with this and cut. Now, I do cut with what I call my craft rotary blade, because this is sticky, slightly sticky, and it will gum up your blade. So you either want to use an old blade or use one that you don't mind destroying, because see how little bits of things are sticking. And that's just not uncommon when you're dealing with adhesive products. So it's always good to have, I write paper on mine, but something that you can use that you don't worry so much about the blade, and you don't ruin all your blades. You just have one, you use it as you need it, and then when it just doesn't work anymore, you can get rid of it. I want to cut a couple small trees, and I'm going to, let's see, where do I want to do it? I'm going to cut this. I drew a line because I want to make some little trees, and I can always tape this back together, but I'll show you something else. I'm just not ready to do that yet. Okay, so because these are small, I want it to have, some multiple different colors, and I don't want just lots of big pieces. So this would actually work out really well. So I can go there, or I can go here. And which do I like better? I kind of like the idea. I don't want too much of that red in there. Let's see. This actually works best. This is almost too narrow. I can't quite cut what I want. So I'm going to lay this. This is already a cut edge on this side, so I don't need to worry about that. I'm just going to lay this along that edge and use my ruler to hold this in place. And all I do is come in and I cut it. Make sure we line that up. And I cut it right on the edge. Now, alternatively, you can draw a line. You can use chalk, disappearing ink, whatever works for you. And this, because these are small pieces and very straight edges, I just went ahead with my rotary and it worked pretty darn well. I don't know if I got that corner. Oh, I did. Fantastic. Okay. So now let me just turn this around this way and line that up. This should be good. Well, I just saw my pattern move a little. Let's see where we are here. Nope, that looks good. Once you're to this point, you're ready to go. You are going to maybe stage this on your background, decide where it's going to be. But what's nice is it now has an adhesive back, and all you have to do is pull a corner up and just like that. You want to make sure, though, that that adhesive remains on the fabric and not on the paper. The paper is like wax paper, parchment paper, so the adhesive releases pretty easily. And what's nice is this is very sticky. And I can then come back and say, all right, I'm going to keep that adhesive on there, or that paper on there, until I'm ready to apply it. Now, if you have an idea of where you want it and you just want to put it there temporarily, just fold your piece back and just put a corner in, and that's not going to go anywhere. And you can lay it down and say, okay, this, and then put a couple other pieces, whatever the case may be. This works out really well. Then when it comes time that you're going to actually attach it to the background, you just pull the whole piece off. And that's what this piece is. This is off the big trees. And what's great is you now have a pattern. So if you decide you're going to come in and make some small trees and cut this up, you still have an original pattern. Now, I would want to trace this onto something, obviously. But so this is a larger tree, and this is the way it looks, just like this small one. And again, we just come in and we grab that corner. Sometimes you have to get your fingernail down in there between the paper and the fabric, but you just want to make sure that that adhesive stays, and then everything's going to go great. This is really a great way to put an applique piece together. It keeps the edges nice and tight, so the seams are not going to come apart. You're going to have much less fraying. Because it's raw edge applique, you will have some fraying, some loose threads, but it's pretty minimal. What we're going to do, a lot of times when I do raw edge applique, I just do a straight stitch, but for this I'm going to do a small zigzag. I think that's going to work better, and given sort of the design that we have here, I think that'll work out fine. So my trees are cut. What else do we need to talk about? Oh, yes, we need to talk about the background that the trees are going on. All right, we're going to take a look at the background in a moment. I just wanted to show you a quick adaptation, an adjustment that I made. So this is the tree that I didn't like because it has the straight seam down the middle. So I just cut it into a small tree, and you don't even know it. But this can be reused. I can piece it with something else. I can overlay. So, hang on to these, and for a period anyways, until you get a feel for how you'll use this, what you'll use it for, and whether that'll be beneficial for you. I'm going to start with the center of the table runner, which is going to be 12 by 28 inches. And it needs to be a light background because I'm going to applique the Christmas trees on top. Now, there's a couple ways you can do it. If you want to do the super simple way, you cut out a piece of background fabric, 12.5 by 28.5 inches, and you're set. Alternatively, what I want to do is go scrappy because I'm just all about using my scrap fabrics right now. And I have a bunch of low volume fabrics that will work perfectly for this to make a wonderful background. And I have strips. I have charm squares, but I think the strips are going to work better with the trees. The charm squares might create too much of a block pattern that will be distracting, whereas the strips will just run continuously from end to end. And I have, it looks like 3 sizes. So far I've found some 2.5, some 2-inch, and then some 1.5 inch. And then I have these wider ones, and what I'll do is I'll cut them down to fill in where I need. I also found some pieces that had been put together for another project. I can use those. I do have some yardage if I come up short that I need a little more something somewhere. And it's just a matter of staging the fabrics and deciding what I'm going to use. Now, here's something. I like the idea of having, I call this sort of an old-fashioned, almost a Victorian kind of fabric. And I think for Christmas that works really well. That's sort of a traditional print or style of print that we see. And I don't mind the gray. I just don't want the dark gray. So I'm probably going to use the back side of this. And you see the difference that we get by turning that fabric over to the back side. And I like the lighter look much better against all these fabrics. And actually, this is similar. This has that dark gray, and I can put that down too. So we still see the image, but not as, what do I want to say? It's not as bright and not quite as visibly stark. I think that's what it is these are so much darker than the rest of these other prints that it really stands out too much. And then, of course, I have some gold script here that's really pretty. One thing I don't have that's pre-cut, I have another, let me just show you some of these fabrics. I have another text print. This is actually script, and I think that's really pretty. This is a fun one. Again, I might use the back of it. I'm not sure. Like these, I'm just not sure yet once I start putting it together. But here's one that I really, really like. It's one of my favorites. It's the music notes, and I've used this in a lot of other quilts that I've made. And then these here have a bit of a tannish background. This has just a little bit of a green. So there's some colors here, or I should say there are some low volume here with colors that will add some interest to the background without creating too busy of a background, because I want the trees to be the focal point. So what I'm going to do is start strip piecing what I have. And the first step is to take everything in one size and just sew them together in one long strip. And then I'll start cutting them into the, I'm going to cut them at 29 inches so I have plenty of room for making any adjustments. And I'm going to use my traditional method of joining strips using the diagonal, because then that way, like I said, I love that transition, and that is a favorite way that I like to join my strips when I do a lot of strip quilting. So that's my first step. I'll get all these pieced and I'll start putting the background together, and we'll take a look from there what happens next. So when I was putting all my strips together, this is what I did. This is how it turned out. And you can see the diagonal joining of each of these strips. I alternated. These were cut at 2 inch and 1.5. So they finish at 1.5 and 1, which I think is a pretty good size and looks nice. I've got all kinds of fabric mixed in here. You'll see that I turned my grays upside down because I didn't want to have them really dark on this side. That worked out well. And so I really like how this looks. So if you want to just make a straight piece for the background without doing any piecing and just cut a solid rectangle, this is the way to go. And I had a kind of a creamy fabric with some metallic stars and such, and this will work out wonderfully. But what I want to show you is what this looks like with our trees on it. Oh my goodness, how awesome is that? That is just wonderful. I love how this is turning out. It's turning out better than I thought it would. It really is. Now, let's take a quick peek with our border. So I have a couple pieces of border here, and you saw the piano keys going together, and look at this. Oh my goodness. Isn't that going to be fun? I am really excited about this. And there's a shortcut for this too. Don't worry, you don't have to do all this work if you just want to do a quick piece and focus on the trees. The trees are the star of the show. And I think they turned out wonderful. This is great fun. All right, so I need to finish putting this together, and then I need to figure out how I'm going to quilt this, because I'm thinking I'm going to go reversible on this. Put one on one and this on the other side. And I need to think that through. So let me work on that, and I will be back and show you what's next. Now it's time for the piano key border. And the easiest way that I find to do it is by strip piecing and then cross-cutting the width that you need for your border. In this case, I want a 5-inch finished border, so I'll be cutting these at 6, just so I have enough room to trim things up and make sure it's even. Now, what I do is, for example, let me just show you on these, like I took all my green fabrics and I sewed them together with diagonal seams. And by doing this, I have a nice long piece that I can sew to. And then I did the same thing with the reds, again with the diagonal, and I sewed the greens to the red, then the low volume, then I had my dark greens. And so I just kept repeating this until I had a good wide piece and used up a lot of the fabrics. Now these I can come back and trim out and put between my blocks. So this is what I have. These were the initial blocks that I cut off, and these now measure 8 inches across by 6 inches. And you can see they have a very similar layout in the pattern of the colors, but the fabrics are all different. And I love how these diagonals work through. And it's one of my favorite ways of doing it, and I'm sure you've seen it before. And then when I get down to the end and I ran out of a particular strip that wasn't long enough, I ended up with some shorter pieces. So, when I'm putting this together, I can sort of put it like that. And then I had some 6-inch pieces cut already, and I just trimmed them down to a narrower width. And then I can come in and add those when I'm joining my blocks together. I like doing it this way, the strip piecing, because it goes together quick and easy. And I can cut it and we're good to go. Then by adding these extra pieces in, it changes up the repetition so that I don't always have the same colors. And I'm using the reds because that's a great accent for what I'm working on here, but it can be any color that you want, or you could bring in a completely different color. I wanted to have some of the low volumes in here, but not a lot. I wanted to focus on the green with the red accents, and that's where I am. So I'm going to piece this, and I'm going to then be working on the trees next. So that's going to be the exciting part. And then once all these pieces are finished, it's time to put it together. This is going to be a fantastic table runner. I think you're going to love it. And wait till you see the easy, what do I want to say? The easy step you can take instead of this piano key if you don't want to go to all this trouble. It's a great way to use up scraps, I can tell you that. But there is another way you can finish this piece off without this much effort. So let's go ahead and move along, and I'll show you what we're doing next. Well, look how far we've made it. I want to show you how this all goes together. So I have my tree cut, the paper's on the back. I have my trunk, and I'm going to line my fabric up because I want this to go right in the center, which will be right here. Now, what we've done is we've finger pressed this on, and this paper now will peel off. You want to make sure as you're taking that paper off that the adhesive stays on the fabric. And if for any reason it's sticking to the paper, just go ahead and rub it again, maybe from the fabric side, just to make sure you've got a good stick going there. And we're going to put this, let's see, 2, 4, 6, right here in the middle. And we're going to place our tree on top. And I'm going to start from the bottom. So again, we're going to pull this out just a little bit. Now right here, that the sticky part is staying to the fabric. So I want to make sure it's going to stick to the fabric and not to the paper. So I'm going to pull that out again. There we go. It's just a little bit. And what I can do is grab it with my thumbnail. There we go. Just like that. And then I'm just going to hold that together, and this pulls off very easily. And now we're going to line this up, and we want it to be straight. So let's see, I'll put this about here, and we want it centered and straight, just like that. And then all I have to do is press it, and it's going to hold for a good amount of time. I wouldn't want to let it go too long, just because if it gets fussed with, then it may start to ravel. But once you heat treat it, then it's glued down for good. So what you do is you need to use a hot iron set at the cotton setting with steam. Now I have a steam iron, but I also take like a dish towel, a cotton dish towel, and wet it and put it on top, because steam is what makes this work. And if you don't get it hot enough and leave it on long enough, which it takes about 10 to 15 seconds, I believe, maybe 10 to 20 seconds. If you don't do it long enough, then the glue does not adhere and melt in, and then it gets stuck in your needle as you're sewing, which is no fun. But otherwise, there's no problem at all. There's absolutely nothing that gets stuck on your thread or your needle. It sews nice and smooth, as long as you've got the pressing done so that it sticks well enough. Now let me show you how this one turned out. I've already pressed this one. Look at this. I had to put the 2 extra on the side. This poor little tree looks so lonely, so I cut some little ones out and put them on the side. This has been pressed down, and you can see I can't lift it up. This has been steamed down, and it's not going anywhere. These, on the other hand, I have pressed in place, but see how easily that comes off? So until you're ready to press it, you have some time that you can manipulate it and adjust it if it's not exactly straight or where you want it. So there we are. We're getting so much closer. Now we're getting ready for borders, and we're just about there. I'm getting ready to start my applique, and I'm going to use a zigzag stitch just on my machine, and regular foot, etc. I thought about the walking foot, but this isn't really that thick, and I don't want the feed dogs of the walking foot to interfere with the edges of the applique pieces. Now, I used the scraps of the fabric that I trimmed off my backing just to see how it would sew. And I was concerned at first because without any stabilizer, a single layer of fabric gets all bunchy. But I did it on the seams, and it worked out fine. So I got my stitch length selected, and then I took a little piece of scrap. Now this is what happens when you put the adhesive on the wrong side. The correct, proper side is underneath, but that's okay. I was just practicing the stitch. And so this is what I did. And I like a tighter stitch, not close together and not far apart. And I want the stitch to come over just a little bit. I found in the past if I bury the stitch right in the edge of the fabric, it's going to split threads and cause some raveling to occur. And generally that just means a little thread or two poking through. A lot of times it can just pull out, but I trim it as close as I can. But not so much of a problem here that I've experienced. I did a little tree first just to make sure that everything was going the way I wanted, and I really like how it turned out. And you can see how I have the stitch coming off over the fabric just the littlest bit. And that, I think, helps hold everything together. It gives it a nice little finished look. And any loose pieces as you go along will get caught up. For example, right here. See these little pieces? That'll get caught up in the stitching, so we don't have to worry about that. And I did another one down here, but let's go ahead and work on the big tree. That's the one I want to show you. So I start with the trunk, I come over, do the tree, come back, and come down. All right, I want to start back here more. There we go. All right, so we just spin around and come the other direction. And you just want to focus on keeping your stitch in the same place as you're sewing. And for me, I want that needle to come just on the outside. So look at where on your presser foot that lines up for you, and that's where you're going to sew along. So what I do is I have this fabric just past the center. That way more of the stitch is on the fabric side and less of the background. When I get to the corner, I like to have my needle to the outside, so when I turn this, I can just sort of place myself where I want to be. There we go. And just start sewing. Okay, I got a little close in there. I'll show you after how that looks. These are the things that we're going to notice and most people would never really look close at. Okay, so there was a point here, let me see if I can find it, yeah, right here, where my stitch was not going over the fabric. It was coming right on the edge. See the difference here where it's coming off the edge? And I just find I like the look better, and this is going to potentially fray your fabric if you get too close and stitch right on that edge. Once you get going, you just fly right through. I'm sewing along, just getting ready to be finished, and I'm down to my last big tree, and look at what I found. When I trimmed this, I was cutting it, there was a little piece sticking out that I was supposed to cut off, and I didn't. So what do? I can sort of broaden that stitch to come down and catch this, and I don't like the idea. What I'd rather do is put something in here and just stitch over it. I think that'll work. So I had a piece of this fabric, which is this, with the gold letters, and I put some steam seam on it, and I cut this little tiny sliver. Look at how little that is, and I'm going to line it in there. Now, if I'm lucky, I can get the backing off. I just want to press this to make sure it's on good. And let's see how well, oh, look at that. Oh my goodness. Wow, that was way easier than I expected. And I'm going to line this up. Let me get my stiletto to get things right where I want it. And let's see, I had it sort of like this, I think. There. Here we go. That goes right there, so it kind of, look at that. I mean, this part here, it looks like I can probably cut that off completely, or at least a part of it. And let's just see where we go. All right, now I'm going to cut this And I'm going to go put the iron right on this little guy so it doesn't go anywhere while I'm sewing. And then I will come back and show you how we fix this. I'm sure glad I caught it far enough ahead that I could just stitch right over. Okay, wish me luck. Okay, so that little piece right there seems to be working. I'm going to pull out just a couple of the stitches on back, but mostly I want to bring it back. I need my seam ripper for this, I think, and I'll just take out a stitch or two. And there we are. Just want to pull that top thread down to the bottom. I don't know if that's going to work. It doesn't want to cooperate. Let me try doing one more spot here. Sometimes you know you can pull that top thread through to the back. Nope, not going to happen. So I'll pull it from the front and just trim it. There we go. And put it way back here. Where are my nippers? There we are. Okay, there. That pulled it back. And we'll just give that just a little trim. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and I'll start just a little behind where I stopped so that I overstitch that. I don't want to back stitch it because it gets too thick and heavy, but I do want to overstitch it just a bit. And let's see, we're going to go right about here and get myself lined up. I don't need to pull my thread up necessarily, but I am going to, just in case there's an issue. I don't want anything knotting or doing what it shouldn't be doing. All right, I have to kind of take this so it doesn't all get caught around the presser foot. There we go. Bring our thread to the back. And we're just going to take one little stitch at a time. There we go. All right, we're coming up on our point that we replaced. Let's see how that turned out. Well, you really don't see anything. I think that's the edge. So if I were to wash this, I might have trouble with that, but I'm not going to worry about that. I mean, you wouldn't even know anything happened. That's awesome. All right, now we're going to come across and we're going to finish this. So I stitched right over the trunk where I stitched earlier. And now I'm going to come down on this side. And we're there. Okay, so look at that. Let me get those threads clipped nice and close. And you can see it's a little thicker right there with the stitches overlapped. But it's not something that's going to be terribly visible. Now this guy's done. I think I'm just about finished. And I have one little one over here. And then once that's all together, we will be putting our pieces, our borders on and getting everything pieced and ready to quilt. We're so close to being finished. I'm attaching the piano key border. I put both my long sides on. I sewed and pressed it. And this made the decision that it will not be mitered because I did not make this long enough. You need to have your border extend past the border you're going to be meeting up with. And I only made this as long as the length of the runner itself and not the extra length. So we're going to just square them on top of each other, which I'm good with. So I have this corner here, and we've done this one. Have a little bit of overhang in each corner that I'll trim off. Now I'm going to go to the other corner, and we'll get that end finished. Then it's going to be time to get this quilted. Do you have any ideas? I've been thinking about how to do this. I have my lines drawn. I have my filament thread in that you can hardly see. And I'm going to use my walking foot and just start stitching diagonally and following the lines that I drew. This is a small quilt, so this will go quickly. And I just thought these diamond-shaped quilting lines would look pretty cool on here. And I am quilting from the back because it's the smaller side. I didn't have as wide a border to use, so the back turned out a bit smaller. But it's still pretty darn close to my original dimensions. Alright. So my quilt is spray basted. Everything's holding up well. We're just moving along. All right, I'll keep going and I'll catch up with you when I get closer to the end. I have my first row of diagonal lines quilted in. You can hardly see with this thread, but it's when you look at it from a bit of a distance, because then you've got the dimension of the fabric where you see the quilting. So it is really a fun way using this filament thread. You can see the other lines that are already quilted in. So see, here's a line and here's a line. But like I said, it can be hard to see. All right, I'll get finished with this side and then we'll talk about what we're going to do next. For those of you who love the idea of a table runner but don't want to go through all the fussy piecing that I've done with this project, here's the simple version. A plain solid background, a border with some sort of a colorful motif, in this case a plaid, and just line that up. It goes together really quick. And for this, you know it could be fun. Oh, I found the perfect fabric. Instead of using a piece that you put together yourself, find something like this. Look at that. That would make wonderful trees on the back of this. So there are always easier ways to make it. I like showing lots of interesting ideas to put things together, but don't feel obligated by any means. If you want to go super simple and get it finished and make some wonderful Christmas gifts, this would be awesome. Now let me show you the front. So this ended up being the back, and that was my plan from the get-go. I don't know if you can see, but the quilting is done on a diagonal, so we've got a diamond, and I really love that. And here's the front. Oh my goodness, doesn't that look wonderful? These trees are great, and that piano border, the piano key is just fantastic. I love it all. And it looks wonderful. It's just such a fun look, especially for holidays. And because we have the trees with the angles in them, and we have the diagonals here. Oh, look at this, what I just noticed. How cool is that? It almost looks like that's woven in there. Ah, I love the surprises you find in pieced quilts. So we are going to trim this down and put binding on it, and it's finished. We have come so far with so much. I'm really excited to be to this point, I have to be honest. So let me go ahead and get what I need, and we'll square this up so we can bind it. And I just need my long ruler and rotary cutter, and I'm going to put my ruler along that edge, lining it up with the seams, because then I know that I'm getting a square cut. And I'll just come over here, cut halfway, and then finish off at the end. And now I'm going to do the same on the sides. Actually, I'll get my shorter ruler. This is a 36-inch ruler, and I love it because it's great for doing the long edges. But it's hard to manage in a short space. Okay, so we are going to line up right along our seam, and we want to make sure that over there is nice and straight on the edge that I'm cutting, because we know we measured that already. And this is going here. Everything looks wonderful. Okay, I'm going to move that just a little bit. Thought I had a piece of cardboard there. It's just some brown fabric. Couldn't figure out how a piece of cardboard got on my quilting table. That's just unheard of. Okay, let's keep going. We're just about there. Oh, I can't tell you what a disaster I have created with all these little pieces. I have piles of fabric of every size and dimension all over the place. But that's okay. It's pretty wonderful. All right, so I'm going to line this up and put this on a line so I make sure I get it straight, and that looks terrific. And we're just going to do this last one here. And then it's time for the binding. I love it. And I'm going to put a bias binding on. I enjoy the fun look of it, but the other reason is a lot of what I've done for Christmas pieces is I've rounded the corner, and using a bias binding just makes that so easy. It's such a quick way to quilt, to finish a quilt, I should say. So now I need to get something round to round my corners, and then we are going to get our binding ready. So I just got a plate out that has a nice round edge, and I'm going to take my rotary cutter and just cut around it just like that. Whoops, I didn't quite get around there. And there we have it. So now when I do my binding, I'm going to have a nice curve to follow. So I'm going to do that on each corner, and then I'll get the binding on, and I'll be back with a finished quilt before you know it. And here's our finished table runner. I think it came out wonderful. And you can't quite see the red binding very well, but I think it turned out great. Unfortunately, this picture doesn't do it a lot of justice. The colors aren't quite as bright and vibrant as they are in real life, but oh my goodness, this was such fun. Definitely a labor of love, and I'm anxious to keep going on. I have a couple other ideas of things I want to do. I certainly appreciate y'all being here and following along and getting all sorts of holiday ideas together. So enjoy. I hope you have an opportunity to try something like this. And whatever you do, just keep on quilting. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic rest of your day.